Hi guys, it's Joey. So firstly, I'm going to apologise for the light. I can feel people laughing at me, but the light in England is a interesting shade of there is no light grey. So apologies for the lighting. I've been everywhere. It's nowhere better than here, so please bear with me. So this video is about the Greek goddess Circe. The Greek, not the Game of Thrones. And we're going to talk about some myth, some energies that came forward. This video was a request with 2 requested spell items, and I kind of wish there'd been more because I kind of loved this energy. I really enjoyed this energy, and kind of delving into the not only the myth, because I knew, I think, all of the myth, if I'm remembering correctly, because I, as a child, was deep into my mythology and like all the way through life. So I know the Greek mythology pretty well. Apologies if I stumble over words. I'm still recovering a little bit, so I've still got a little bit of anti-mush brain, but we're doing our best. Me, myself and I, that is. We, the royal we. So, the Greek goddess Circe was a goddess of sorcery, and I thought it was interesting here to note the Greek word for sorcery, which is pharmakia. I might be pronouncing that wrong. Pharmakia, which obviously relates to the modern word pharmacy, and it kind of has this herbology and herbalism energy going on, which I found really intriguing in the process of, I just noticed I've got Bran poking his head out around, there we go, this video will be me looking like this. I found it really interesting, the correlation here with witchcraft, sorcery and herbs in particular. There was a holy herb used by Odysseus to avoid pighood in the most famous of the stories involving Circe, which is when Odysseus lands on her island. Him and his men are invited in, and she's very beguiling, and she actually turns all his men into pigs. As far as I'm aware, there's not really any discussion of her motivations unless she felt threatened, which kind of would make more sense, but there you go. But Odysseus actually uses a herb to avoid that, and there's this really interesting plant correlation with Circe that we'll talk a little bit more about. So there's kind of this green witch element. There is mention of drugs, herbalism, illusion and intoxication. She's a goddess of magic, and she's sometimes, however, sort of demoted as a mortal, portrayed as mortal, a witch, enchantress, a sorceress, or sometimes in between as a nymph. So kind of, it's not quite goddess, it's kind of like a magical being, nymph. She was the daughter of the Titan Helios, god of the sun, and an Oceanid, which is one of many ocean energies that also come forward, and as a result, alright Brown, you can go sit back down, there's kind of like this earth ocean energy that weaves through the energies of Circe. Now, before we get onto that, I want to say that in making this set there were some weird synchronicities, if you like, correspondences that just kind of leapt out that were kind of influential and kind of made me go, okay, that's interesting. That's an interesting correlation that you wouldn't necessarily have thought would come through, but there it is, and it's interesting how the matrix, if you like, the energy matrix of synchronicity all comes together, accumulates together, and kind of makes you realise things. And there's been quite a lot of weird goings on with this set, and a lot of it is quite tactile, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But the synchronicity here is that I had started and have since finished watching The Travellers on Netflix, which I wholly recommend. And I've forgotten the actor's name, but he's Will from Will and Grace. And I thought, and originally I was going to have a tough time watching it because of Will and Grace, but I was watching it, I was like, no, it's fine. He's done a bang up job. He's amazing. And quite handsome. And Anyway, Travellers is about time travellers, and they come back in time, and they inhabit the physical bodies of somebody else seconds before their appointed death. So they then take over the body, and so that person dies, or not necessarily in the way that they would have anyway, but that they die, and then the traveller takes over their body and goes about trying to save the world because of this cataclysmic events that led to humanity being on the verge of death, but highly technologically advanced, and so on and so forth. Anyway, if you haven't seen the show on Netflix, I highly recommend it. But the synchronicity here is there is a comet that would have hit Earth and caused all sorts of natural disasters and started the accumulation of that timeline, and they called it Helios. So Helios, Titan of the Sun, Helios here as Circe's father. And then the energies of Circe kind of has illusion and travelling and prophecy. And this show, this modern show, has these themes of like time and what happens if you change, and the prophecy of what will be, and it looking like magic to people in the 21st century because these people have foreknowledge of what's going to come. And obviously technology and so on and so forth being so advanced. And they actually use nanites, which you could, in terms of healing magic, if you like. And you can kind of see the correlation there. And I just thought that was one of many weird little synchronicities that happened whilst working with the energies and the research of this particular goddess. So it's worth pointing out that she is a goddess. There were people calling her a lesser goddess, whatever that means. I was like, as far as I'm concerned with that. But she does get portrayed as a mortal in many. I think I had a, I just had an energy flow over me there, like approval. So I told you she's very involved. She's been very, very involved with this. So then we have her mother being an oceanid. I'm thinking that's like a water spirit. Another source suggests, oh okay, this is about Odysseus and Circe again. They had 3 sons, and in a lost epic, Telegony, Circe told one of her sons, Telegonus, that his father was Odysseus, who had returned to Ithaca. Isn't Ithaca an amazing word? Ithaca, I love it. And his wife Penelope. Circe gifted her son with a poison spear, and he accidentally killed his father. Whoops! But again, there is this relation to poison and pharmacy. So in that story as well, all the other sons of Odysseus and Penelope come back to Circe, and they become immortal. So there is again this poison and healing and poisoner element here, and as she rules over sorcery and witchcraft, I think that's interesting that these themes appear of poison and healing herbs and the ability to harm as well as the ability to heal. From a Greek epic in the 3rd century BC called Apollonius Rhodius Argonautia 4.662, and this is the quote: "They found Circe bathing her head in the salt water. She had been terrified by a nightmare. Her house streaming with blood and fire, devouring all the magic drugs with which she had used to bewitch her visitors." So from this quote, this is really interesting because of a number of themes that come to the fore here. Firstly, she was bathing her head in salt water. So again, you have this oceanic correspondence, but that to me is, after having nightmares, is a ritual of purification, using the salt in water and pouring it over the head to cleanse oneself of nightmares. The nightmares again being prophetic and forewarning her, and these all being energies within her realm of sorcery and magic. It kind of has this kind of idea of herbalism and sort of drugs, magic drugs, and to bewitch and beguile, and that being a realm of witchcraft, which is interesting in its modern portrayal through things such as flying ointment, where poisonous or baneful herbs are used in small commodities in order to enact a physical change, an intoxication of sorts. And of course, alcohol being another example of legal methods by which people use certain things to change their consciousness. From that is another quote from the same epic. She set about the rites by which a ruthless slayer is absolved when he seeks asylum at the hearth. So this was talking about Medea, and Medea going to Circe, and in her taking in Medea and the guy that was with her, whose name escapes me, they had committed murder, and they came into her hearth. Now, I find the really interesting home and hearth lore in Greek mythos. So basically, if someone's under your roof, they're kind of under your protection. It's a sanctuary, it's a sanctified thing, and it's kind of this whole hearth and home. And it's not like a legal thing, but it almost is. It's kind of a sense of propriety, a sense of way things were done, and welcoming guests into your house. And I think it's, again, from a Game of Thrones parallel in modern times, the idea of the salt and the bread and someone being welcome in their home so they couldn't harm them, that comes from this Greek custom, which filtered through into the medieval custom as well. So Greek hospitality and culture coming into play here, which I found interesting. In the Absolution Rites, she performed blood sacrifice rituals and libations to Zeus, including cake and wine. So she has a role here for divine retribution, forgiveness, justice, intervention, and cosmic law. And she was like a conduit between the accused or the guilty and the gods. And there was a kind of priestess role here, basically. So sorceress, witch, whatever you like, became this kind of priestess and kind of worked on behalf of the gods and in conjunction with the people, so for these people, and offering rituals and sacrifice and so on and so forth to the gods in order to placate them on behalf of people in her home who she was responsible for. And a final quote from that was, flashing eyes which shot out gold rays of light, identifying her as divine or semi-divine depending on the interpretation of said text. But I liked that because it kind of goes back to that Helios, god of the sun, and kind of like the flashing of the eyes and it being a little bit of something telling. It almost has a shapeshifter vibe to it, but not quite. She's more of a transmutational vibe with regards to Circe, because she transmutes things, herbs in particular, herbalism, herbal potions, men into pigs, and so on and so forth. She's often portrayed as well as a seductress, and therefore there is an illusion and a transformational energy there, a transmutational energy there, because she often uses herbs and potions and things. So there is a beguilement energy going on, a kind of to make oneself more appealing, I was going to say appeasing then, appealing to the opposite sex. Circe presents an interesting breadth of powers and abilities and energies. On one hand, her sea witch credentials are unmistakable. Her heritage is ocean-based. She lives on an island surrounded by the sea. She is quoted to use ocean water in a purification spell, and so forth. There is also a strong case to be made for earth magic, though, through herbalism, although ocean plants and materials can easily lend themselves to this, and the pharmacy poison healer link to witchcraft is palpable. It is worth noting here that the second thing, there were three, interestingly enough, or perhaps not interesting, perhaps that makes perfect sense within the realms of things, that the sensory note, that when I was sort of going over whether I felt the sea element was stronger or the earth element was stronger, or if it was kind of a combination of both, I got this very, very tactile scent of salt water, of seawater, and I was like, whoa. Like, there's no seawater anywhere near me. I'm right in the middle. And I was like, that's a really strong scent. I can smell it now. I've started She's very, very hands-on. It's very interesting. Maybe because obviously she lends herself to witchcraft. She is correlated to and related to Hecate, I believe. I read that once or twice and I found that interesting. And so maybe it's because of it being a portrayal of witchcraft by witches, for witches, honouring a goddess of witchcraft, so maybe she becomes very involved because of that reason. But I had this very strong smell of seawater as I was doing the meditational work, the sensing and feeling the energies of her, and I was like, that's very, very that's sometimes this has happened with Greek gods on occasion, that they become quite invested. I don't know if it's because normally I don't have much to do with them, because I don't personally work with them, and so when they get offerings made, they're kind of like woomph, like head on or something. And the third thing about that is that when I was creating the oil, I'm going to show the two products at the end here in a moment, I was looking at it thinking, right, there's something missing from this, and something fell on my head. I'm not kidding. Like, I was in my herb thing and something fell down, and I'm like, yeah, that would work. So she, you know, that happened in part of the creative process. Particularly when making the spell oil. So that was interesting because I think she has a potion master element to her. So she was like, one of those in one. I am the potion master, one of those. She also seduces, easily captures, enraptures, and bewitches the senses. She almost has a snake-like energy to her to beguile the senses. We talked about transmutation. And then something that she actually said in meditation that came through, that is, I am intoxication. And I thought that was telling. I thought that was summing it all up in one very easy sentence. I am intoxication. That is what I am. And that has so many different meanings energetically and all the rest of it. I was like, yep, there you go. Right, so we'll start with the oil. Apologies for the light again, but you know, I will do my best to move around, and there we go. Now, I wish I had smell-o-vision, because this and the cauldron, I tweaked and tweaked and did something new with this, and it's intoxicating, one might say. So the oil has to be one of her potions, one of her brews, if you like. And I also wanted it to walk the line between herbalism magic and oceanic magic. I wanted it to look like an ocean potion for a sea witch, basically. But it still has that herbalism element. And I really wanted it to feel intoxicating and feel like magic, and this connection to this goddess that was requested. So then we have the spell Cauldron, which is the second of the items. Now, I may well just go make votives and stick them on the store, because I love this smell. I love this energy. I hope you're going to be able to see all the shimmy. There we go. I think you can see the shimmy working through. We have a little bit of a gold light, just a tad, just a gold light for those gold flashing eyes, daughter of Helios. And then it's very much about sea magic, night magic, and the goddess herself. Got some interesting bird song going on outside. I don't know if the camera will pick that up or not. Okay. So I hope you like them. I really do. To the point where I could almost keep them. I won't, I'm not mean. But I really love them, and to be honest, I might well make myself some of this to work with, because the scent is just divine and I love the energies of it as well. So that was all about the Greek goddess Circe, some of my feelings, interpretations of the energies, working with those feelings and energies and images that came through quite strongly. So I hope you enjoyed, and many blessings.